There was a lot on the edge for me when it came to curiosity that I was too scared of reaching. But what I've learned over my life is that you have to go through to learn so much about yourself that you might not know under one environment.
Hey everyone, welcome back. It's Ashley, and today I am joined by Kelvin Wang. Kelvin's story is rooted in a curiosity that has shaped his journey through healing, creativity, leadership, and connection. In 2017, Kelvin survived a near death car accident that changed the trajectory of his life. And as a first generation Chinese American and walking quadriplegic, he's learned to move through the world with a deeper sense of awareness, intention, and compassion for the experiences of others. Today, we'll talk about the chapters that shape us, the places and the people that shift our perspective, and the parts of ourselves that we rediscover along the way. So, with that, Kelvin, welcome. Thanks so much for joining me.
My goodness, Ashley, this is so great to be here, like present with you. This is my first podcast out in the wild, so I feel honored to be with you on the topic of resilience and just so much to reflect on. A lot of gratitude over my 10 years and a lot to unpack. But very grateful and I guess at the beginning, I'll just say that all of my views are of my own and not of my employer. And there's a lot in my story that I'm hoping to move and co-create with you.
I feel so honored to have you join me in this space. So, thank you for being here and for your time and to create in this way together. I'm really excited for this conversation. So, when we first connected, something that stood out to me was really just the way that you leaned in with such curiosity. And I've learned how much that way of moving through the world has shaped the story that you're still actively writing. And you shared that you think about your life in chapters. And so I'd love to start there. You have been very open about your car accident and that undoubtedly being a pivotal moment in your life, but it also doesn't tell the whole story. So, can you take us through that time and really how that moment, alongside everything that has come before that and after, has shaped the way that you see yourself and in the world?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm zoning back now because I'm gonna close my eyes and revisit that moment. It's in fiction, this in media res, like right in the middle of my story. I remember um I remember opening my eyes. It was December of 2017, and I was 2 weeks away from transferring um offices to my dream city, which at the time was Los Angeles. So my whole goal was to move to California to learn more about storytelling, to learn more about the film clients at the time. And it was a practical way for me to move from Dallas to LA. And life has a lot of curveballs. And I remember just waking up and realizing that something was very wrong inside of what appeared to be a car. When I closed my eyes and reopened them, I noticed a cracked windshield right in front of me, and I tried to move. I knew something was gravely wrong because I couldn't move my limbs. I couldn't move. I couldn't even reach for my phone at the time, and so I left everything up to hope. And I realized I keep hearing the buzzing sounds of the cars. It was about 6 or 7 a.m. in the morning, and just realizing that everybody is in cruise control. Everybody is heading towards a destination, and realizing that I was at the bottom of a bridge, likely that this might be the last of my chapters. And so it was a strange moment because I had to lean in and accept the moment. And because I've did so much up to that point, wanting to move towards my dream, that I felt like this was I had to learn how to accept in that very moment and realize I may not be able to move on. And just just as I was drifting in and out of consciousness, a man, um, over 50s, with scruffy beard and trucker hat, he comes into clear view in front of the cracked windshield and gasped audibly. He said, oh my God, like there's somebody in this car. And I felt this huge sigh of relief inside of me. And I realized I was okay because I could think. I didn't damage my brain. I was all right, but I knew something was seriously wrong with the way that I moved. And I was in pain and also in shock, but was very grateful because Kent was his name. He was my saint at the time, and he called the first responders. All of a sudden, like the helicopters came down. I told my parents I was okay, and then I got airlifted onto the helicopter. And next thing I knew, I felt like inside of a movie, but it was a blur of images. And I got into the ICU, and they had surgery on me, two surgeries on my neck, and I came out of that with a spinal cord injury, amongst a lot of other injuries. But was so grateful to just perspire. And there's so much that goes on with that. But I just remember the first thing was in the ICU, and my nurse his name was Billy, and he just kept coming through. And every time I pressed the button, he came through with morphine. And I felt really great. He was just always there, really, really prompt. Um, and a really efficient morphine supplier for me at the time. And but yeah, they're just very lucky to be able to breathe at the time.
Was there any part in that, Kelvin, that you realized at all what had happened or how the accident happened, or it was just in that moment you found yourself where you were and just in total shock? Like, at what point could you even start processing what had happened?
I felt like at the time I I didn't have enough energy to think clearly. And I could only just feel at the time, step by step. And it became one where, like, because I was immobilized and I had no choice but to receive, if it was the pain, if it was um, the outpouring of love that people had the first week that I was in the hospital. I think I took it one step at a time. I didn't. I think I and I'm a huge movie person, so I've seen a lot of independent films. I felt like I knew the arc of what's going to happen, and I knew to take a step back and just let it all happen and play out in front of me, and understand that a lot of what was not in my control, I had to let it go. So a lot of that was like moment to moment, and receiving everything as they come and accepting it. And whether it's, having an infection in the hospital that was unforeseen, a lot of pain medication that came my way, which was a roller coaster of emotions and feelings. But just taking everything, the highs and the lows, which in parallel, a lot of that I was no stranger to in my own life, because in my life, I embraced a lot of invisible pain. And also, I knew what brought me joy. And so it's similar to how my life unfolded. But in that very moment, just appreciating the art of the highs and lows, I think is what was going through my mind at the time.
I appreciate you going there and sharing that, because I think, you see that happening from the outside looking in, but then what happens whenever that is actually you and now you're going through this process and trying to, make sense of what happened and then maybe replaying other instances in your life? Like, how is your mindset being transformed in some way throughout that process?
I love I love your question. It makes me really reflect on what my body was receiving, and how it was playing throughout the 2 month that I was in the hospital. If I take a step back, I think all I want to do is to feel comfortable in life, with or without the accident. When I was in the ICU, the hospital, the inpatient rehab center, I found healing, and I found this joy in connection. I I feel like through connection, to touch on the transformative elements during my experience, was a huge part that made me feel really alive at the time. Away from the pain medications, away from what was the big question mark with my future. Was I going to move forward in pursuit of Los Angeles? Was I going to stay resilient and try to write my way forward. I had to learn to throw all that away and just lean in the present moment. I think that was when I lean in the present moment, I remember there was a lovely woman in her 70s that I met, and her name was Sandy, and she's probably one of the strongest humans I met at the time because, I mean, she had a severe C1 or C2 spinal cord injury. And at her age, being able to walk and being able to befriend her at in one of our occupational therapy sessions where we were playing games and just sharing a moment of laughter. And there was this moment where we were all standing and able to skip or move or run a little bit and even just have a competitive race. And with our age gap, it was an incredibly humanizing moment. Trying to find little elements in life where it's very humanizing, no matter the darkness, is something that I've learned because I grew up trying to survive, I think. If I start with my childhood, I was born in China, and I was raised by my grandparents. I didn't see my parents until I was 3, so there was a big void in what belonging meant for me, and so I had to relearn how to acclimate over and over again. I had to learn how to begin again. And so, in some ways, fear was a big theme that I had to grapple with early in my life. I was no stranger to that. So, going from China with huge attachment with my grandparents, learning a lot of poetry from my grandpa, which he was a big influence in my 3-year-old self before that, and moving to Belgium, not learning how to speak Flemish and learning how to immerse myself with nonverbal cues at the time, and then moving to Texas in the United States when I was about 5 or 6, and starting that over again to acclimate. And so I was in survival state in that time, and there's so many different elements of belonging for me that I had to learn. Um, to be comfortable in life. One with my own Asian community, where there was this heightened sense of competition, which I was never able to feel as human as I wanted to be. And I've always craved an emotional, the creative process, and I was not getting a lot of that with my peers at the time. And in settings where I went to college at Texas A&M University, where I was in the minority and I didn't have anyone that looked like me. But even in business school, I think over the years, what I learned that I really craved was creative expression. And I was operating under a scarcity mindset at the time. And I just want to feel seen. Like that's been the constant theme in my life. I just really want to feel seen. And at the time in college, I really wanted to find a dream, find something out there that I can move towards. And it was gonna be something creative in life. And I had to find a way to be the driver, the main driver of my vehicle, and find a way to feel comfortable in life. And, I went through rejections in college, through all the big fours, but I knew PwC had a lot of film clients in the West Coast. So I said I was gonna hop on that. I started my career in Grant Thornton about a year after I I started looking, and I really had this thirst, this hunger to move into PwC and find my way to the film clients in the West Coast. And so slowly through this path, I was able to go from one of scarcity to abundance. And now, coming back to the moment when I was in the hospital, it is one where I'm constantly sense making. So I'm constantly knowing that I'm out at a scarcity when it comes to the physical. But I've gone through this path. I've gone through multiple rites of passages in my life. And so this was not a novelty for me. This was just a slice of life for me. And I'm used to that. So I'm in the hospital, in the rehab center, knowing what it takes already to go from survive on the path to thrive, and just have to replay that one more time, play it out in life one more time. And then fast forward, I'm doing that again. There's just this constant cycle of getting back on the bike and trying to find peace in life. And healing, I've learned healing is a never ending journey. Once you reach a personal milestone, another hole opens up, and then it just, but every time you embrace it again, your body's used to healing at a more efficient pace. And I think, and you accept the new normal. And I've learned how to accept my new normal with my physical pain, with my spinal cord injury symptoms, and I think, yeah, really embracing whatever way to be an alchemist in life, and be comfortable in life. So dreaming, comfort, I think, is such a strong connection for me.
It's really so powerful, and I mean, there's a lot to touch on there. I wanna mention this because what you just said about forever healing while we're here, it really resonates with me so much. I feel like you said, there's always going to be something. And I believe as long as we're here on earth, we are forever on the journey of healing and coming back to self and evolving and learning. And I think about going back to the top of what you were sharing about what helped your healing process in the hospital. And you mentioned that connection. And then I think about Kent, who was that person that came to the door whenever you were in the car, where that gave you that sense of hope in that time. And then all those threads throughout that process and moving forward. And now, like you seeing this connection and wanting to be seen and what does belonging mean. And I find those conversations to be so interesting because the more that I'm learning, it's that coming back to self, and less of trying to fit into each box here or there. It's that full expression of all the parts of who it is that you are and bringing that to those spaces. And so that's just like this reflection I'm having in real time as you're sharing that. So how has curiosity showed up for you in those ways and helped you to navigate through those different seasons and transitions and learning more about yourself? It's a little loaded question, but take it where you want to take it, Kelvin.
I definitely lead with curiosity because when I reflect on curiosity, it means something different to me at different stages of my life. So when I grew up with curiosity, um, it was my only way of sense making because I didn't know. I was with my immigrant parents at the time. It was the only way for me to be informed and know the social cues, what is a completely different culture. And so I was forced to be curious. And one of the best outlets for my curiosity in the intersection of safety for me at the time was through movies. So I became known as the kid who was a big movie buff growing up. I love Blockbuster. I remember that was just this timeless. Yeah, it just brought me so much joy growing up, and that unpacked the whole world. I became very curious on different genres, and at the time, curiosity had a huge element of safety for me as well, and there was a lot on the edge for me when it came to curiosity that I was too scared of reaching. But what I've learned over my life is that you have to go through in order to feel comfortable and to really embrace life and really to learn so much about yourself that you might not know under one environment. So flash forward to, I graduated from A&M. I was hungry to land in a different environment, going from the South to the West Coast, because I want to see what it was like to feel next to the industry or topic that I was interested in, which was stories and film in the West Coast and Hollywood. So I took that as my goal coming out of college, and my curiosity continued. It intensified, and I got myself finally to LA after my accident. And now my curiosity shifted to one of identity more and more because when I'm in the West Coast, all of a sudden, where the label can say that I'm now immersed with film clients, it took a lot of resilience to finally get to where I wanted to be, that I said I was going to reach, and I did with PwC. But a lot of the unexpressed and the minor feelings came with immersing myself with the creative community or the Asian American community in the creative arts. And when I did it, and the insight they came up to me, seeing people who look like me being comfortable with being quiet and identify with an identity that they are just in the artistic world was very healthy for me because I grew up feeling I had to be very bold and very vocal in order to be seen. And there's something interesting about just being peaceful and okay with who you are. And I saw that as just to me, a rewarding feeling for a lot of the communities, for the diverse communities out in LA. And just the richness of stories over there. So my curiosity in the West Coast took me to learn more about my own history, my own Asian American history, and that shifted my mindset to be like, what else is possible for me out here? So it's this. I didn't explicitly write it down, but it did unfold similar to a hero's journey in that way. And I think when I landed, became more curious about my identity in the West Coast. Then it became one of what's next for me? And at the time I was an accounting major. I landed, I had to reinvent, shifted multiple times during my journey, but I went from um, tax accounting in Dallas, Texas, to audit, focusing more on the entertainment industry and film through PwC in the West Coast, and that took a lot of different hurdles, a lot of connections, and a lot of hard work, and I finally made it. But then the ultimate goal, when I became more aligned as a person, became more in touch with my identity, then it was one of, all right, well, how do I shift this now? Quote one, I have symptoms, my physical symptoms that I want to be realistic with in stressful environments. And so, is there a place where I can find the best balance of my own wellness, but also land something that was more creative and more human centered? And so, I landed into what's called the Purpose Inclusion Fellowship with PwC at the time. And found a huge light with that. It was a huge spark for me. And then from there, became introduced to coaching. My curiosity with coaching was full of richness. I loved so much of that. And then from there, took me to a new opportunity at the end of this fellowship with leadership development that came up. And I took on the role that was offered to me that landed and no one forced me to go to New York. I said I'm going to just now move to New York because I was curious. And so I moved to New York. And next thing I knew, because I didn't have a plan, I didn't have a big agenda of what I was going to do in New York. I go to New York City. And then all of a sudden, I'm restoring back the arts in my life. Took up in 2020, this year, 2025, in January, took up an acting intensive for 2 weeks. And it was very restorative. It was restorative because there was a link in my story when I got in the car accident in my complete destroyed car in 2017, where all of my film notes and all of my artistic, I had gone to a production workshop, a film production workshop, and all of that was in that car and never to be seen again. It destroyed in what appeared to be a car that evening. So a part of me was lost like 8 years ago. And so what I think I just followed my intuition and it just all made sense why I'm in New York City. I took up the creative arts again. It was very restorative. I continued with improv. I continued with a clowning workshop, which I love to touch on because I think there's something fascinating with that in the human experience. But a big message being that there's something about restoring ourselves with the lost joy or a buried joy in our lives that really shifts the way that we view the world and our energy shifts. There's something that changes with when it comes to embodiment. You feel more aligned. There's just um, this curiosity now no longer feels like survival back in my teenage years. Curiosity didn't feel like identity anymore. Curiosity for me now is like, what is else can I deliver with my uncovered gifts in life? Right. And so that's a fuller way to look at curiosity for me. And I'm very full of gratitude as I say that because I never thought I would ever get a chance to be in New York and very excited for the unknown in some ways and as I'm reflecting.
You're just like totally shattering all of those boxes that we construct. And I think that's very powerful.
I think that yeah, unlabeling of that you mentioning is, and also having the agency to label ourselves through our choosing and not what a system or society tells us we are, right? And I think that covers so much about endurance that you speak about, and it's something where it's a lot of fuel for me to move forward.
So I got to go back to ask you about the clowning. Explain this. What is this clowning workshop? Take us there.
Yeah, yes. So clowning. What I did was in this year, I was introduced to theatrical clowning, and it was in the acting school, the Barrel Group. And I remember taking a really transformative workshop that brings in all walks of life, and where our focus is on embracing the absurd in life and allowing us to heal through embracing the messiness of life, and doing it in a way where we bring the audience, we make a very vulnerable connection with the audience. And in clowning, it's called the public. So, um, so one of the exercises was really memorable was you say everything as it's happening to you in real time without multitasking. So in a linear format, but you slow it down because we so much of our lives is about creating five different arrows all the time. Right? So we're such multitaskers. And so an example, like I'll be sitting down with the rest of the audience, and if I'm the clown, I would go, I look up, and you slowly then gesture, I would bring my face to look up. And then I would say, I will now look at the audience. And then I look down, look around, or not the audience, the public. And I will make eye contact with someone in the audience. And then I would say, I am now going to look at my spot. And then I would slowly move and look at what is the spot that I'm walking towards. And then I would say, now I'm walking to the spot. Or I stand up actually, and I stand up, and then I'd say, I will walk to the spot. So you break it down into this like the simplest little things imaginable, but we're so uncomfortable breaking it down into pieces because there's such a heightened perception of how we come across to other people, and I found it especially healing to break it down and really laugh at the absurds in life, the absurdity in life, and to show to be completely mask off and be vulnerable with the with a group of strangers. And there was something there that was so healthy to see, let's say, a retired lawyer be able to rediscover play again, and really just find the joy. And there are moments where it felt very dramatic and really humanizing to the point where as I'm doing all the walking to looking at the audience, then going to where I'm going to go, and then coming back to sit down, is that last moment I remember getting to my spot and looking at the audience, someone in the audience making eye contact, and I say, I'm going to say goodbye now. And there's this silence, this loud silence. And the whole room, the energy just shifted. It became quite emotional. And then, I could feel everything around me. I was breathing really slowly. And then I then muttered, I'm going to sit back down now. And so I sit back down. And it's something that we don't see because we're constantly trying to be the best versions of ourselves. But oftentimes it's nice and healthy to be so simple and so linear and just laugh at the little things that we take for granted. There's this one phrase I really appreciate. It's to poeticize the irritating, like some way to reframe the noise around us to be comfortable with life. And that came, yeah, that really connected the thread of feel like I've been trying to poeticize, for me, the uncomfortable my entire life. So it all connected, and it was restorative. And I'm curious if it's not just clowning, just everything else, the performance arts, something that at a larger picture, whatever brings us joy, I think it can be underappreciated because we want to feel like a whole person, and in a society of accomplishment, right? I think that it's nice to take a step back, and what I would love to say is this form of bedside intimacy, the bedside manners when it comes to leadership, which I find interesting, is people at the time when I was in the hospital, people came to me, all walks of life, people from where I worked at, people in my friend circle, my high school, my old friends, people who I did not expect to visit me, people who I was surprised did not visit me. There's so many reflection points, but the ones who showed up, I really appreciated the way that everyone became mask off at that very moment. There was a very startling visual for me of my PwC partners at the time hugging and shedding a tear with my immigrant parents. And that was a powerful form of for me to realize this is so different. This is special. And to see that vulnerability come through different walks of life, I think that is a form of connection that you can't replicate. You can't curate. It happens if it's certain elements feel stranger than fiction. It's this way of connection where every connection might be your last, right? And I really abide by that because people speak so much more of what's healthy to them when they realize that you may never be the same again. But we don't carry that with our day to day when it comes to connection. Oftentimes, we often take these moments for granted. And so that's why I was so curious and really enjoyed connection, because one, it was healing for me to connect with the sense of belonging that I was uncomfortable with growing up, that I didn't receive too much of. But B, just seeing what actually happens. I felt like a therapist sometimes with people visiting me. I just become a therapist, and people like to unload vulnerable parts of themselves when I'm paralyzed and in the hospital. But I realize that's, there's a mask off quality that we often dodge because it's uncomfortable. But they were very comfortable being vulnerable when I was in a heightened situation. And so I wonder about that. I wonder how that shifts how we connect, how that connects to how we operate in leadership. And so and maybe reflect on that time. It was very vulnerable times.
It's really interesting because I think about how the way that we show up can free somebody else to show up, creating that space where somebody else can just come as you are with whatever it is and really just strip off all of these performative elements. So we're just talking about this like performance culture that we live in, and how much of it is that space that you create to just give somebody the permission that maybe they weren't giving themselves to do prior because of all these societal expectations and standards. I don't know.
It's really interesting. I always reflect on that. In the coaching community, we don't like saying we're fixing people, right? We don't like to, we don't, there's something to be shunned about the word broken. As I'm reflecting, I notice that when I accept that I am broken, a lot of agency comes with that. Like I'm inspired to move when I embrace that I'm human and I'm at times very messy. But it takes with that acceptance of. I think my biggest appreciation about the arts was reminding me of how beautiful embracing the messiness can be. And there's something that Carl Jung mentioned about the wounded healer. I really connect my own archetype with the wounded healer and how that inspires me to move. And as someone with an intersectionality, as a one and a half generation Chinese American immigrant with my family, with fear in between, psychologically, emotionally, feeling scarce at the time. But now having to embrace a new intersection of physical difference with a spinal cord injury became one of it added more layers to the reason why I wanted to move. And it was so powerful for me to amplify my curiosity and to have it build to one of momentum for me. So like whenever I move, whenever I'm in motion, um, in connection with people. I always discover a new element of myself and others through the process. I find something new, lost joy. And for example, the performance arts, but it was through moving. It was moving from Texas to California to now in Jersey City, next to New York City. I was able to find my curiosity for the human experience and the human condition inspired me to move because I felt like there was not much in front of me. There was not a lot of media representation of me growing up. So I think I just wanted to feel full. I just wanted to feel alive. And that became one of what fueled my curiosity. So but it really helped me because it became one where I was the writer of my story. And through that mindset, was able to bring the best of what I can offer to all the systems around me instead of thinking that I'm just in one community. I get to find joy with different walks of life. And that comes to another connection to socioeconomic, because I see a lot of that with, in a hospital setting where I see a lot of people who did not have the same fortune as me and same privilege as me. Um, eh, one of my neighbors in the hospital was one of the greatest, kindest humans, trying to make a friend in the hospital. But I realized what was different between myself and my hospital neighbor was that I had a family that would show up at my bedside every other day. And not everyone has the same privilege of having that same community. And so framing it from one of privilege, I think was helpful for me to understand that what I was grateful to already have received, because not it is one of incredible privilege and fortune to be able to have a community that can inspire you to move. But through that process, how can I co-create with others so that I can move, but in the process, how can I move others, right, in their own stories? So that makes me wonder about, and just to be kind to people. We never know. It's a little cliche to say that, but like it is one to remind ourselves, like we really don't know how we feel about our own communities sometimes. Are we putting a mask on? Can we really connect and really fill our own cups to bring the best to the world that we can offer?
So true. It brings to mind this picture of, and I know you have a high value for travel, and recently we're just touching different corners of the world. And I think that just speaks right to just the appreciation for culture, for difference, for people and connection in that way. And I just have this picture of when we're on a plane and we are traveling and there's 200, 300 other passengers crossing the ocean or whatever it may be. Whenever you have 10 hours of travel, you got a lot of time to think about stuff. And I think like, wow, it goes back to just you never know. Like we only see what's on the surface, right? So we see each person that's in each seat, and underneath that, like the why of why they're traveling, where they're going, for what purpose, and just like these things that I think start to tap into this, that element of wonder, because it's the stories, that each and every one of us carry with us. And, for some, I recently went home for my grandfather's funeral, and I was sitting next to somebody on the plane who was as happy as you could be, wanting to chit chat away. And at the same time, I have no idea, the story behind that person either. And so it just, I think, creates this awareness, for one another and how we can just show up with that kindness and compassion, and really, doing what we can to see one another, knowing that we don't even know the how.
I love that, and the story that you bring up, because there is something about being present when it comes to connection that I feel is so it's hard to be. It's very hard to be present. What I realize is when we are present, we're able to create meaning, or find what is called, there's a concept with Chris Voss's Never Split the Difference. It was a book about negotiation, but there's something about connection that he brings up where it talks about the black swan, and it's about finding the unknown unknowns in life. And it's through being present with somebody and being emotionally open, and whether it's through a loved one or a complete stranger, getting to find a new revelation about each other. as something, as a new spark that we can build our own momentums as we move forward in life. And and when we are co-creating it, it feels very restorative. It feels healthy. And so it brings to mind, yeah, what is the unknown through connection? Yeah, it's just there's so much with that and how it builds to our own form of community, and with community, our own sense of agency and resilience in life that comes from that, from a healthy community. It's interesting. And the best part about connection is versatile because you can feel like my form of liberation is being in any room and feeling like I can be free and just myself. That's the best feeling, to be you in any room. Everything that you're saying, like, it sparks a different tangent for me. To like, oh yeah, this is why I appreciate this part of this art form of life. So I yeah.
Yeah, well, it's a beautiful picture to be in a room where you can just fully be yourself, and I think that as humans, as people, we can help be part of creating those kind of environments for one another, and then maybe you might find yourself being the one that's, holding the space for somebody else and what that can unlock in them too.
Oh yeah, and unlocking and just in your form of story and how you're paving the way for so many to share their stories. I think it's incredible for someone's gift to be able to benefit others and allowing others to feel restorative. Because I think resilience oftentimes it feels like this big buzzword that sometimes gets thrown, that everyone's more curious. If we think about move like Hollywood movies or stories, we always curious about the buildup of all the minor feelings, all the unseen parts of someone's story that leads to someone's form of how someone becomes resilient outside of like, this is I'm just a poster child for a spinal cord injury from a car accident, and now I'm able to move forward. But what is the story that comes with that is so powerful, that it's powerful to embrace it, because it allows us to move forward in life. And I love that with the story that you have, and reframing what your identity is in life, from your identity with basketball to how can you immerse yourself in different parts of the world, different facets of life, and to your podcast. I think that feeds off of not just your energy for life, your competitive spirit, which is that, it brings you aliveness, but it's able to fully form if we go back to the theme, the notion of kindness, you're able to be yourself through all the different platforms you're on. I think that's very admirable, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you for that, Kelvin. I appreciate it. And again, I'm so thankful for you being here. And it's an honor, to have you in this space and having this conversation. As we're talking and as you're sharing, there's just so much to reflect on in that. And that's why I love the different directions that these conversations can go in, because there is so much there and there's so much to bring out. And that's the beauty in our seasons in life, and how, this one moment or this one, environment that you're in, what that can unlock, by leaning in with that curiosity that then can spark something in you and these possibilities, that there's more to seek, more to discover. And I appreciate that so much, just in, the complexity of who we are as people in so many layers. And so thank you for bringing all of that here in this space and sharing with us. It's powerful, and excited for what's to come in new year, new chapter, all the things, newness. So we got to keep tapping into the new.
Yeah, tapping into the new, and yeah, and I look at the unknown so much more with a lens of, I've always I had to be hopeful through the majority of my life, but now it's this peace, this peaceful, like, what is this continuation of my own my own art of becoming, and as I'm strongly connected to my curiosity and continuation of what feeds my identity in the arts and connection and the human experience and leadership, gives me great joy and wonder to continue to step into that. So so it's so healthy to be present with you, Ashley, in this podcast.
For sure. I didn't mention this at the top of our conversation, but this is episode 99 of the podcast, which feels very serendipitous because so much of, what we're talking about here and just these different threads of, connection and curiosity and humanity and the people in our lives that support and showing up. And for me, it's those relationships that are really everything. How people become parts of our journeys and chapters in such meaningful ways. Sometimes it makes sense, sometimes it doesn't make sense. Anyways, thank you for being here. Very grateful. And I think to wrap it up, my question for you would be, what is your encouragement for those listening in as we do go into a new season, a new chapter into 2026? What was your encouragement for those listening when there's unknowns on the other side?
There's unknowns on the other side. I love this takeaway question because there's so much that's floating inside of me, but I feel like the biggest question that I've that's always resonated for people and for myself is what brings you peace? And as different elements around us, like the weather, the changes in seasons that we can't control, we can thrive with we can be our own weather in some ways. Like we can curate and write our stories. And I think the most powerful form of existence is to feel like your story actually in momentum, and that you do it with a sense of gratitude. But there's always this edge of growth. There's always this void that we carry. It's somewhere in our lives that it brings back to what I mentioned about restoring a certain joy in our lives. Because what I find is we can never be truly at peace until we address the parts of ourselves that it's almost like we have to be our own therapist in some ways, and just find what it is that can bring us comfortable to be comfortable with the uncomfortable, and addressing a certain truth of ourselves. But really, and not to do it overnight, but to take little steps in our lives to build more of that muscle of feeling comfortable with the uncomfortable. Because when I've been doing that throughout my entire life, I feel like it's getting me one chapter closer to, or as close to peace as I can be. And that's where joy then excavates. Like it just comes out. It'll come out. But to really find what it is that you're not really addressing, that was somewhere part of our adolescence, something that we have trouble letting go of and really addressing it. And I've noticed that pattern with people and myself, that we just have to answer the question, like, what brings us peace? And maybe that'll signify how we choose to immerse ourselves in the messiness of it all, like the seasons and this next part of our lives. Yeah. What is that? What would bring us peace?
So good. Such a question to ponder. And it's the questions, I think, that we ask ourselves. So thank you, Kelvin. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being part of Endurance Diaries.
Thank you so much. 99. Oh, it just feels like an edge now. Like, what is that turning to number 100? There's just, yeah, I love it. I love it.